probably very insightful session today. The session is called Multi-Million Licensing Business. So, in fact, licensing as a business model is a pretty big business. But to be fair, it's not very much known about it. For example, I have not much of a clue about how it works. And it still offers a lot of opportunities for young companies as well. Our next speaker, Andreas Spechtler, he worked the last 10 years in the licensing business. For example, he worked with Dolby International in the licensing business all around the globe, and he is a licensing expert who's now an entrepreneur who on the one side consults licensing businesses and on the other side invests into them. So please welcome on stage for an insightful talk on the licensing business, Andreas Spechtler.
Hello, good evening. I know it's very hard to be the last guy before the drinks and meals. Nevertheless, I'm really happy to be here, as this is a business that a lot of people don't know. So in order to get started here, I want to give you a little bit about my background and also tell you a little bit about what is from an idea to an invention, what is innovation, and why do IP and patents matter, and how you do licensing business. And hopefully some experts are in the room here, and also some tips for the startups, okay? So my context, as mentioned before, I was 25 years in the tech business, did my own startup in the first bubble, failed as everybody, or many of those. 17 years in corporate incubation, did my own stuff, and then my last job was Dolby International, running the international business. And so I'm really kind of an IP guy. I'm a lawyer, but was always in business in the last 25 years. So I tell you one story that you see how freaky this business is. So one of my first events at Dolby was that there was a discussion about a new business line. And the product manager said, well, and you know, we were fighting hard to get to, I don't know, let's say, profit margin of 15%, and then in the room there was a big debate about it, that 15%, which would normally be a great business, is not good enough if you're in licensing business. You're talking about 40% or more. So that was the reason why I left the corporate world in 2017 and started my little small tech accelerator for licensing business, based out of Austria, in Salzburg actually. Where I come from was just a coincidence. I lived before in London, San Francisco, Amsterdam, and etc. And really focusing on IP growth strategies, help them to sign the first licensing deal. That's really the most important thing, because it's hard to sign licensing deals. And on top of that, I do an executive program, a startup academy that is really focusing on this kind of tech business. So I think you probably know that all. So if you have an idea, you want to protect your idea, you have a couple of means to do that. So you have copyright protection. So you have, if you have a software, most of you have software that is protected via copyright. Of course, a database is protected via copyright, and content, I mean, the music, Hollywood, etc., it's all content protected. And then if you have an innovation, you have the patent model to protect yourself. And then, of course, if you have trademarks, you have a good brand, you will protect this as well, your brand and your logo, okay? So, but what is important is, and this is really key in information, I think it's important that confidentiality is really key from the very beginning. So, provisions in employment contracts are normal, NDAs are important. And I know some people don't want to sign NDAs, VCs don't want to sign NDAs. That's okay, probably to a certain extent, but after a while, be very careful about your IP. And you don't have to be here nervous or paranoid, but I tell you, it happens all the time that IP gets stolen, replicated, mixed into other stuff, and you later suddenly see that on the market and say, wow, this was my idea, why do they oh, I had a meeting with them 2 years ago. So be careful here. So I think a very important thing is an invention itself, you know, that is something unique, and you model a device, a composition, a process. This is unique, okay? But this is not necessarily a business or an innovation. And don't go, an invention is not what you probably want to protect, but you want to protect an innovation. And here, I bore you a little bit with some definitions, but I think I see myself here as introducing to you a couple of things, okay? So it's about a value-add novelty that has an economic and in social spheres has an impact, okay? If you just have something new, if it doesn't really help you, don't protect it, or maybe you do it because you want to have it protected, but you will not generate economic value out of it. I like Peter Drucker very much. He said that innovation is the specific function of entrepreneurship. And it's either an existing business or a new business starting up, and this means that you enhance something, you create value, you do something more than just a normal thing. And I think this is very important for the following slides, that we only talk about innovation that needs to be protected. Just an invention that has no value, well, then you can give it away and you don't need to protect yourself. So patents, as mentioned before, are really the basis for licensing business. So what does a patent mean? And again, I bore you a little bit. So it's actually an exclusive right that was given to you by a state or intergovernmental organization, that you have done something and that you get it for a limited period of time, 30 years. Some copyrights are longer, 70 years in music and other ones. And in return of that, you need to disclose it, so people know what you do, okay? But what is very important, if you want to create a patent, you need to have a claim, and a claim means this is the core of the patent. This is why this paper exists and gets a number from a patent office. So the procedure of granting patents is rather complicated. On the other side, you have people who know that business, so patent attorneys, other people like us. So we help to do that. And there are a couple of bodies. I mean, they're all, of course, on national level. But on the other side, we have now the European Union with the European Patent Office regulation, where also other countries outside of the European Union are part of that European Patent Office regulation. And of course, you have the US Patent Office. So normally people file in both, or you start in Europe because you get a better research result than in the US. The US tendency is, okay guys, I grant you the patent and you battle it out. I mean, you know those, you probably have heard about, you know, Samsung versus Apple, about the form factor of a smartphone, etc. So these battles are arising because checks in the past were not done properly. So important is, that's really important, so you get this right to prevent others for commercially using it, This is really important. It's not about, again, it's about the innovation, not the invention. So the key is, you don't have to license, you're not forced to license a patent, but you can license a patent. And I will, in a few minutes, you will see what I would say the value of patents, or the sheer amount of patents that are existing, are driving businesses. And one comment here, Google is open source, but I don't know if anybody is here from Google, but Google buys a lot of patents. Or Alphabet buys a lot of patents. Yeah? So patent can be licensed, and that's why license agreements are key to drive the business. Important also, licenses, patents are protected on a nation-by-nation basis. So let's say if you have a US patent, and if somebody in China uses your idea in China, no chance, okay? So you need to register your patent also in China. That's why you need to be very careful once you go into the protection phase, That could be costly. You need to be very careful which countries you pick. You don't need to pick the whole world. But it's very important to pick the right countries. And if you do business in China, better protect yourself in China. And also China is still a problem, but it's moving slowly into some form of protection. So let me move over to patents, what happens every year. So the latest statistics of 2016 in Europe, in European Patent Office, 296,000 patents were filed, and there you see that 50%, 48% coming from Europe of the filed patents. So what you see, the 25% US and then China 5%, these are only the patents that Chinese or American companies want to have protected in Europe. They're already filed in the US and they're protected. Sometimes American companies also file in Europe first and then take it to the US. It's possible, both is possible. But what you see on a global basis, 9 out of 10 countries on a per population basis, so how much patents are created per capita, it's pretty amazing how many European countries are in the top 10. It's 9. Only Japan comes at number 9. Leading Switzerland with a lot of patents, obviously, from healthcare and pharma. And then you have all the other holders. And Austria is actually pretty good on number 7. So now let me come to the reality, okay? To the reality, where are patents used, okay? And everybody has a smartphone, I guess, yeah? So look at your smartphone and guess how many patents are in your smartphone. How many patents are licensed? Maybe some of them are used, but many of them are used and licensed. 250,000 patents in every smartphone, okay? This involves quite an interesting business behind, okay? So they're licensed by companies or by patent pools. So patent pools means that companies come together and say, hey, I have a little bit on this topic, I have a little bit, let's pull it together, let's make a patent pool. And my former company, Dolby, has done this also in some areas, in mobile phone, for example. Everybody knows HEAAC. That's a patent pool where Dolby is part of it, and then you license this to smartphone guys. So it's either licensed by companies or by patent pools. And in the patent pool, there is a distribution regulation, okay? How is the income of the patent pool then distributed into various stakeholders? So here you see the breakdown, just for your information purpose. So it's a large percentage of the patents are in communications, obviously, in software and in hardware and backside. So that's why the biggest licensees here are the infrastructure guys. So Ericsson, Nokia, now upcoming also the Chinese people, Qualcomm, obviously. And then you have various other, I mean, almost every Samsung, everybody who is in the tech business is also in a smartphone, somehow related with a patent. And some of them are blocking patents, okay? So they are really important, those patents, in order to function. Something cannot function without this patent. And of course, those patents have a high value then for this company. And they also get more royalties out of this patent, okay? So you know, a smartphone, the bill of material depends, maybe average $100, depends high or low, but let's take an average of $100. So there's a serious number, a double-digit number of that $100 that go into the licensing pot. So it's not about the device, it's not about the chip, it's really about how the thing functions and how it works. So I want to explain to you a little bit how licensing business works. So this is not so easy, but interesting for you. And if you have never seen this, then bear a couple of minutes with me. So there's a licensor, software company, big, small, they have IP. It's patent, but it's also software. It's both. And then you license this to a licensee number one. This is the smartphone OEM. So he produces that. But this smartphone OEM is a very key component is the IC, the chip. So you need a chip that's built into the smartphone that really makes the thing work. So as a licensor, you need to work with both. Okay, you have a direct license with the licensee, and then you have an implementation license. So you grant, let's say, Qualcomm, Intel, ARM, all these guys, you grant them the license to use your technology on that chip. So this is the license of IP. This is what happens, license 1, license 2. And then they deliver the implemented IC back to the manufacturer, and then they build it in. Why is this so important? It's very important because royalties are based on units sold in general, okay? So units sold need to be reported. Reporting means that you hope that the report is accurate. However, everybody in the industry knows that the reporting is never accurate. And there are various reasons for non-inaccurate reporting. Could be a human error, could be deliberately, could be by purpose, trying to escape, trying to say, well, I'm not shipping this there. There's a lot of reasons for that, okay? But in general, the key is that if you have a license agreement with licensee 2, with the chip guy, and the chip guy tells you, I sold 10 million chips to this smartphone manufacturer, and the smartphone manufacturer only reports 5 million. So where are the other 5 million? And this is very, very important also for startups. And interestingly is, the Qualcomms of the world and the chip guys, they're very interested to work with startups if you approach them in the right way, because they want to bring something new. And you know, if you go to Intel and trade shows, you always see those innovation booths of the chip guys. They want to actually show the other guy that they do something really great. So a lot of startups don't dare to talk to Qualcomm, Intel, whoever, MediaTek, I mean, all these guys. I encourage you to do that, because this is, most of the time, actually, you can be really proud. And once you made it into the chip, the other guy takes you much more serious. If you only come, okay, you need to implement yourself on software level, on software stack, and not on IC stack, if you know that, okay, then it's a different discussion. Because in the end, then, this goes into the B2B customer, retail, and goes into the consumer. So we call this the two-pillar licensing model, which is key for you to understand how we do business in this area, which ensures that you get paid. That's really key, and with the help of two contracts, you can be very successful. Okay. Couple of tips for startups, to be very practical. Never talk about your IP without an NDA. And I mean IP, really talk about how this really works, technically works. You can talk about, okay, this is the benefit, and you can use this for this and that. That's fine, because but once you open up the motor and talk about the engine, which is the core IP, then you should have an NDA. Because if you talk about an idea that you might have not filed yet or might have not protected, it's over. If you have a meeting and there are 3 people in the room and they heard it, your best idea is public domain, and you can never make money with that. That's key. With an NDA, you're protected. You can even tell them a little bit more how your engine works. Of course, you can. I mean, it could always happen that they go around you. It happens, but in general, it is a good protection with an NDA, and it can be a mutual NDA. It doesn't have to be a crazy NDA, because in the end, if afterwards you can say, well, I had an NDA, and you're infringing the NDA, even there is nothing in there in the NDA that bites the other one, you can still go after him on unfair conduct, etc. So you should still, from a legal perspective, you can still do that. Second, I think you should have a very clear IP strategy. So really think where you use IP, okay? In some cases, you don't need IP. That's fine. Then I'm not interested in the business, okay? But if you have IP, means patents, and you know that you might use it, or it helps you to enhance your value proposition, make it very clear in your strategy, and write the strategy down, validate it with your engineering team, that they are behind you. Because this is a lot of work for the engineers initially to get things out, because they have sometimes the great ideas, or a CEO who is the founder, the product visionary, okay? They need to work on this IP strategy. I think very important is to establish a professional licensing model. So what I've showed you before, the two-tier model, this needs to be implemented. So this is not trivial. This is something where people are available to help, okay? But you need to have it professional. If you walk, let's say if you're a startup from Austria and you walk up into Cupertino, to Apple, and you don't have a solid licensing model, they laugh at you and they know, okay, now we play with them. Cat and mouse, bim, 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 okay? But if you go there and say, okay, this is our strategy, boom, 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 this is our licensing deal, hey, this is our proposal for our licensing deal, and then Apple, of course, they want to enforce their licensing agreement on you. Well, then let's have a debate about it, okay? Well, my licensing deal says that, yours said then you're in an interesting discussion. So, but really have this professional licensing model in place. Very important, I mentioned before, engineering, R&D, very successful startups, and they're existing in Austria and in Europe, obviously, have a dedicated R&D team. Maybe a young, crazy guy who really focuses on that, and then focus on execution, work with the patent lawyers, go through this process consequently. So this is really important. Learn from best practices. This is key. So this business is not so known, so if you know somebody, talk to these people. They're very open, they're very warm, and say, okay, sure, I had this problem. By the way, I wouldn't work with that patent attorney because that's a problem, but this guy is good, and whatever. So I think this is really important, to work with professional people and get their input. And also understand what startups did. Patent lawyers, professional patent lawyers, as I mentioned before, this is really key. And reserve funds for the applications and the protection phase. So, 18 months and then 2 years, so probably you go up to whatever, 3 years in total, 2.5, 3 years. You need to have the funds ready, because, and this should be known to investors, hey guys, we have 5 patents in the pipeline, and those patents payments need to be in your business plan. So finally, a couple of statements. So their patents are stronger than software copyright, definitely. Patents drive value in early stage startups. So if you're starting up your company and you have some cool ideas, and you know you will need those ideas in your value proposition, your technology, then it might help you. And it raises the awareness immediately with some investors. So I'm not investing in a company without patents, because I know how to handle this and to grow from there, and strategy. In later stage, the patents protect your value. If you have that, it's harder for you to get sued or get overrun by big companies. And again, it's the basis for the multi-million licensing business. And multi-million means units and euros, because you always get a unit fee. Okay. So where can you learn about this? And I had an idea to work here together with Stanford, and I started up in Startup Executive Academy that I do once a year in Salzburg, in a castle. It's a 6-day go-to-market workshop course that very much focuses on tech, IP, the business model around it. I do this together with Baba Shih from Stanford, who is the lead professor. So we have great people from all over the world there. I mean, you see Google, Huawei, SAP, other people, Nokia, that come together, experts from that field, and help startups. This is only open to startups, no VCs there, where we really showcase things to the young people to be able to develop their strategy. And go-to-market means, okay, am I really SaaS, or is not my model better licensing business? Or what is my pricing? Okay, what pricing do I use? Do I go to Apple and say, or to Apple? Let's pick Apple and say, okay, you get a blanket license. You pay me $5 million a year, and you're fine. Or do you create a different strategy on pricing? This is really key to be able to earn out later. And the good news again is here, I think that's very important for you to understand, those licensing deals are multi-year deals. So you have a hard work to do, but once you have done your licensing deal, then you earn over years. I think that's the key why this business is so interesting from a business perspective. And with that, I think we're good, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are a few questions on slide. Let's take them,
yep.
Even though actually we're out of time.
Sure.
So how much does it cost to register a patent in a country?
So basically, I would say the cost is, registration is not expensive. It's 500, 800, whatever euros. The total cost of creating a patent is around 3,000 to 5,000, depends on the patent check and qualification. So you need to know your competition patent. So, but average, if you take 5,000 in your budget, you're fine. Okay.
All right, we have a question here.
Yeah.
Test. Does it work?
Hello, my name is Victoria, head of business development at a cold-page startup.
Yeah.
Well, and it's very cool to have a startup which you can patent, you know, and then develop the patent itself. But as for me, we are doing the franchising and licensing in the outsourced markets. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming very hard because of the competitors. But the other part, which is even more hard to understand, is the white labeling agreements which we are signing with MCA. Mm. And here is the question itself, how to build really a good licensing model for the startups of SaaS solutions without actually having problems with MCAs from the white labels?
I think it's about the licensing deal. How you frame your what you give, how you structure, what licensing you give in the value chain. Because you have players in the value chain, and if you have if you're the owner of the copyright or of the software, of the patent, you give the license to different people in the chain. That's where you need, and you sign different people.
Yes. So the main value, which is getting like from the SaaS companies of itself, it's the ways you are reaching the customers, and of course the SaaS solution as itself, including the internal tools.
Yep.
And again, so here is a problem. There is not one internal tool, and then we have to work with the other companies which we will bring. So it's like very complicated structure, and maybe, is there anything I can read about licensing for the SaaS more from the side of reaching the patterns?
Yeah, let's talk after.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question here.
Everybody's in the drinks already.
No. Can you stand up?
Thank you. Well, I'll try to be short. How I understand a license is, let's say, also a way how to tell the user how to use your product. And, I have read many licensing agreements, but basically producers of the software are very often putting away responsibility. So from my point of view, I think that somebody, maybe the law or somebody else, should also take part in determining the license and right on the usage of the software. But what I have seen, end users are very often unprotected against the licensing and terms of the use.
I mean, the OILA, the so-called OILA end-user license agreement, obviously, this is where people write in things, and I mean, this is a political discussion. I mean, it starts with the data protection. Okay, what you can use out of an app or out of a software that you use. Yes, yeah. This is what you probably cannot solve in a license agreement. This is more like, okay, what is the regime? How you do that? I mean, you cannot protect consumers fully with a. I mean, you need to comply in your license agreement with the licensee, with the laws. Obviously, you have to do that. But how the licensee uses then your technology, of course, you can. It's clear he cannot use it in an illful way, etc. But he can create a product out of that. That's why That's why you're not doing this. You're not taking the burden of producing a laptop. You license him some technology, and then he builds it in. So you cannot. The key is that you need to be protected from claims, etc. That's a debate in the legal side of a deal. All right.
So if you can give a quick answer as the last question on how can we participate on Startup Academy and how much does it cost?
Yeah. So how you can participate? Just sign and apply for it. It's a few seats left, but not a lot. And the cost is 5,000 euros. And this includes everything. This includes the living on the campus, meals, materials, drinks, everything. So it's an all-inclusive price.
All right.
Thank you.
So that was the last session for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Looking forward to welcoming you back tomorrow here at the Academy stage. So please give a last applause for Andreas. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.